The First Hunger. Long before traders' ships arrived on the great salt waters of Hudson Bay, long before maps carried foreign names across the north, Cree families moved with the seasons along the forests and rivers that stretched inland from the bay. The winters were long and harsh, but the people understood the land and respected the balance that allowed them to survive. One winter evening, Cree hunters were returning to their camp. The sun had already begun to fade behind the dark spruce trees, leaving the forest covered in a deep blue twilight. The snow was hard and cold beneath their snowshoes. Their breath rose into the still air as they walked quietly along a narrow trail beside a frozen creek. All four men carried empty hands. No rabbits had been found that day. No ptarmigan had flushed from the brush. Even the moose tracks they had followed in the morning had disappeared into thick forest where the animals could not be found. Hunger was beginning to grow among their families waiting at camp. The oldest hunter, Muskwa, walked in front. He had many winters behind him and understood the rhythms of the land. "The animals move," he said calmly. "Tomorrow we will follow the ridge. The rabbits will return." Behind him walked Wapos, younger but patient. He nodded quietly. "The land always provides," Wapos replied. The third hunter, Atiq, carried the group's spare snares over his shoulder. He remained silent, though his stomach had been empty since the morning. The last man in the line was Pisim. Pisim was the youngest of the four hunters. He was strong and skilled, but the long winter had worn down his patience. As he walked behind the others, he stared at the empty forest around him. The wind moved gently through the spruce branches. Then something else moved. Far between the trees stood a tall shadow. At first it looked like nothing more than another tree. But the shape slowly shifted, and Pisim saw that it was not part of the forest. The figure was thin and tall, with long limbs that seemed almost too long for its body. Its head carried crooked antlers that rose like frozen branches into the darkening sky. Pisim slowed his steps. The other hunters continued walking ahead unaware. Then the voice came. It did not speak aloud. Instead, it slipped quietly into Pisim's thoughts. "You return with nothing." Pisim felt a sudden chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. The voice continued. "The animals are gone. Your people will grow weak." Pisim clenched his jaw and kept walking, but the voice followed him. "They will suffer while you walk empty-handed." The shadow stepped slowly between the trees, keeping pace with the hunters. "You are strong," the voice whispered. "You deserve to live." Images appeared in Pisim's mind. He saw meat roasting over a fire. He saw his own hunger satisfied while others watched. The voice became softer, almost patient. "Take more. No one will know." Ahead on the trail, Muskwa turned slightly and called back. "Pisim, keep close. The light is fading." Pisim stopped walking. The other three hunters turned and looked at him. Muskwa frowned slightly. "What is wrong?" Pisim's breathing had grown heavier. "The animals are gone," Pisim said slowly. "Yes," Muskwa answered calmly. "Tomorrow we hunt again." Pisim shook his head. "Tomorrow will be the same," he said. "The forest is empty." Atiq stepped forward. "We must trust the land." But the voice in Pisim's mind spoke again. "The forest does not care about fairness. Only hunger." Pisim looked at the three hunters in front of him. The thought entered his mind with terrible clarity. 4 men had entered the forest that morning. Only one needed to return with strength. Muskwa noticed the change in his eyes. "Pisim," he said quietly, "listen to me." But it was too late. The voice whispered one final command. "Take more." Pisim lunged forward suddenly, raising his hunting spear. The forest exploded into movement. Wapos and Atiq jumped back in shock as Muskwa tried to stop the young hunter. The struggle was brief and chaotic in the deep snow. When it was over, the forest became silent again. The tall shadow stood watching between the trees. It had a name known in the old warnings. It was called
That
name means the one who lives where there is hunger. It did not attack. It did not hunt. It simply waited for the moment when hunger became stronger than balance. As the wind moved through the dark spruce forest, the shadow slowly faded back into the trees. Far away, a campfire burned beside a frozen river where families waited for hunters who would never return. And somewhere deep in the winter woods, a new hunger had begun walking on two legs.